on your tip gauge, you see it there. We're going to calculate everything, the mean pulmonary arterial pressure, the mean arterial pressure, cardiac output and cardiac index, systemic vascular resistance, pulmonary vascular resistance, stroke volume and stroke volume index, right ventricular stroke walk and stroke walk index, left ventricular stroke walk and stroke walk index. Okay, so, yeah.
Can we get the PowerPoint?
PowerPoint?
Yes.
Oh. What is going on with me? I gave her that assignment. Brian won't say anything, he just sits there and laughs. He sits there and laughs. That'll be okay. I've been teaching like 22 contact classes, it was very busy. I just got to teaching advanced pharmacology to the other class, so now I'm teaching only 3 days a week. So I think I'll be all right from next week. All right, so does anyone need any more help calculating the mean arterial pressure? The S plus 2D, S plus 2 times T divided by 3. Okay? Number range is 80 to 100. How about the impact? The same formula, other than you're using the pulmonary arterial pressure. And that's normal range, 13 to 17. How about cardiac output? Stroke volume times heart rate, that's all you're going to know. Divided by 1,000. Cardiac index. No, it's just cardiac output divided by body surface area, right? Stroke volume, yeah. Cardiac output divided by heart rate. The same formula, you just gotta change it around, okay? And then index, stroke volume index. Anytime you index, you're dividing by the body surface area, okay? Okay, factors that affect stroke volume. The amount of blood pumped out in one beat. Positive inotropic agents. Okay, like the Jackson will increase the amount of volume pumped out per beat. Abnormal conditions that will cause it to increase. Hypothermia, like you have infection, your cardiac output is supposed to increase with infection, therefore your stroke volume can increase as well. Hypovolemia, you have a lot of volume on board. Your heart is strong, it can pump out a lot of blood per beat. Decreased vascular resistance, you don't have as much resistance, like the afterload is low. Okay, you should be able to pump out because you don't have a lot of resistance.
What's the normal for the stroke volume index?
60 to 130. Milliliter.
So
For the index?
Stroke volume, right?
for the index.
The index.
Oh, stroke volume index. It just depends on what your stroke volume is. Like now, you got that range 60 to 130. So you divide 60 by your ideal body weight. You divide 130 by your ideal body weight. Everybody's going to vary a little bit. There's no specific, there's a range. Okay? All right. Decreased stroke volume, a factor that will cause it to decrease. Negative inotropic agents, drugs that will slow down the strength of myocardial contractions, will make it not to pump out as much blood per beat. Abnormal conditions, okay, that will lead to a decreased stroke volume. CHF. Okay, so CHF basically is a left-sided problem. It means that your heart is weak. Okay. Well, if your heart is weak, it's not going to pump out adequate blood, okay, per beat, and therefore your cardiac output falls. The same thing with your blood pressure. So people who have CHF that are not receiving treatment will always have low blood pressure as a result of that. But they're always like on the Jackson anyway, okay, at home. Hypovolemia, you don't have enough volume, there's nothing to pump out, so your stroke volume will be low. Pulmonary emboli, well, when you have pulmonary embolism, you get hypoxemic. Your PaO2 drops. Okay. Now, if your PaO2 drops, that causes vasoconstriction of the pulmonary vasculature. Okay. Because oxygen is a vasodilator, so when you don't have enough of it, you have constriction. So that constriction out there in the pulmonary vasculature will back all the way up into the pulmonary artery. Okay. So you have increase afterload there, therefore making it very difficult, for the right ventricle to pump out blood. Any questions about that? Increased vascular resistance. For some other reason, your PVR is high, okay? Or maybe your SVR is high for some other reasons. Okay, that will make sure when you do a PEEP or CPAP. Now, PEEP and CPAP are the same. I mean, they are both positive pressures. We'll call it CPAP when somebody is breathing spontaneously, and then we'll call it PEEP when they're not. But the indications, contraindications, okay, for PEEP and CPAP and EPAP are the same. Okay, so what they will do is to compress the pulmonary vasculature. The more PEEP you add, the more you compress the great vein and the pulmonary vasculature. So that decreases blood flow. Okay. Here is the resistance. Now, the formula for resistance anywhere, anytime, is changing volume divided by flow. Period. Changing pressure divided by flow. Pressure number 1 minus pressure number 2 divided by flow. Just like we do for mechanical ventilation, is PIP, the beginning pressure, minus plateau pressure, the ending pressure, divided by flow. Okay, so for hemodynamic, we got the same thing. Okay, your flow in this case will be your cardiac output. Okay, so now if you want to calculate the systemic vascular resistance, which is the afterload at the left side of the heart, it would be this thing doesn't work. The blood pumps out from here, from right there. We calculate the mean arterial pressure, okay, right there, and then blood flows all over the body, and then it comes around to the right heart. So that's why we get MAP minus CVP, because we're measuring resistance to blood flow from here all the way back to the right heart. Okay? And then we're going to divide it by cardiac output, which is the blood pumped out here, coming around. Okay? And then we multiply by 80. 80 is a constant. Okay, there is a number there to convert everything to things. Okay? Normal SVR is 800 to 1600 things. If it is too high, you give a systemic vasodilator, which will be like nitroglycerin, nitroprusside-sodium, isodale, that kind of stuff. If it is too low, you give a vasopressor, epinephrine, gabapentin, vasopressin to constrict the vessel. Okay? And then PVR, factors that affect SVR, vasoconstrictors. If they are receiving liver-fed vasopressin, epinephrine, that will shrink the vessel, causing the resistance to go up. Okay. Abnormal conditions, hypovolemia. The body just does that automatically. Anytime there's low cardiac output or low intravascular volume, your blood pressure is going to want to go down, so the body responds to that by constricting the vessels. We talked about that the other day. Okay, SVR will go up to maintain the blood pressure. Okay. Decrease CO2. Well, low CO2 is vasoconstrictor. Low CO2 will vasoconstrict your blood vessels. Okay. All right. CO2 is vasoconstrictor in the blood vessels. Low CO2 And then high CO2 in the brain is also vasoconstriction, but inside the lungs is vasodilator. Okay, vasodilator in the lungs. All right, decreased SVR, vasodilator. So anytime a patient is receiving vasodilator, the SVR will go down. Nitroglycerin, nitroprusside sodium. Okay. Viagra on the right side. Okay. Oxygen on the right side. Those are two good pulmonary vasodilators. Here's PVR, the other afterload of the right heart. So what we're measuring is resistance to blood flow. Here's the pulmonary artery here. So blood comes out here, immediately we calculate the impact. And then blood flows from here to here. Very short distance, blood flow from here to here. So that's how come we have impact minus the ending pressure, the waist pressure to the left side, divided by cardiac output, okay, times 80. Normal for that is 150 to 350 dings. Okay? Factors that affect PVR. Pharmacologic agents. Some pharmacologic agents, some drugs will cause it to go high. Hyperinflation of the lungs. Hyperinflation of the lungs will cause it to go up. Okay, it will cause increased resistance. COPD, for instance. Okay. CPAP or PEEP will cause it. Pathologic factors like PE, pulmonary embolism, will cause it. Pressure backs all the way up inside the pulmonary artery. Chronic hypoxemia, that will cause it. Okay. Hypoxemia shrinks the vessels. Factors that will cause it to decrease. Hypoxia, you got too much oxygen, yeah. Oxygen is a vasodilator. If you have more than enough, then your vessels will be even more vasodilated. Isoproterenol, that's a drug, isoprel, is a vasodilator. We have aminophylline, then we have calcium channel blockers. Okay, so this one here, right ventricular stroke walk, okay, is a measurement of how hard the right heart is pumping, okay? All right. So normal, normal is 5 to 15. Okay. When you index it, you get like 4 to 8, and of course it depends on what your body surface area is. This is the left one, how the left ventricle is pumping. Okay. Here's about normal 60 to 80. I mean, the left heart does more work than the right heart. So you will expect the work there to be higher. And then index is about 44 to 60 days. So let's review here. What is SVR, the afterload of the left side of the heart? What is normal value for SVR, 800 to 1600 dings? What type of drug would you give if SVR was high? Well, I would give a systemic vasodilator like nitroglycerin and nitroprusside sodium, or nitride as they call it sometimes. What is PVR? That's the afterload of the right side of the heart. What is the normal value for PVR? Well, that's 150 to 350 dings. What type of drug would you give if PVR was high? Well, I would give things like Viagra, Cialis, nitric oxide, oxygen. Okay, those are pulmonary vasodilators. Okay, so now we're going to do calculation here. So it says that Mrs. B is a 70-year-old woman who was admitted to the hospital 4 weeks ago with a fractured hip. Her past history indicates that she has been in good health previously, aside from mild hypertension. Last night she developed severe chest pain and shortness of breath. She was transferred to the ICU a 12-lead EKG was done and showed the sinus tachycardia. As you come and shift, preparations are being made to insert a pulmonary arterial catheter and airline. These are the things, the measurements from the pulmonary arterial catheter and the airline. Okay? So now, it says to calculate your mean arterial pressure, SVR, wide ventricular stroke walk, left ventricular stroke walk index, and so on. Calculate all of this here. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is to calculate my mean arterial pressure. Well, the blood pressure is given as 120/60. That's the blood pressure there. So to calculate that, always write down your formula, and then the 120 plus 2 times 60. Okay, you add those two together, that will make it 240, and then you divide by 3. Okay, so that will give me 280. So my MAP is 80. Okay, which is acceptable range of MAP. Normal MAP is 93. Okay. Then I can look in the formula. I can calculate my cardiac output. My stroke volume. I can calculate stroke volume because the cardiac output is given and the heart rate is given. So here's the formula: stroke volume equals cardiac output divided by heart rate. Okay, so the cardiac output is in liters per minute. We're going to divide it. We're going to convert it to milliliter because the stroke volume is measured in milliliter. So that would be 5,000 divided by 100 equals 50 milliliters. So that's my stroke volume. Any questions about these two here? But I have to figure them out. I can calculate my stroke volume index because I know what my stroke volume is and I know what the body surface area is. So I'm going to do stroke volume, which I calculated to be 50 divided by my body surface area, which is 2, and then that will give me 25 milliliter per meter squared. That's my stroke volume index. Well, I know my MAP now. I calculated my MAP to be 80, and the CVP value. The CVP value is not given, but I have my right atrial pressure, right? I have my right atrial pressure. Remember, my right atrial pressure is the same thing with CVP, okay? They are both used to monitor the function of the right heart, and by the way, they have the same value. So since my CVP is not given, I will use my right atrial pressure as my CVP. So I'm going to do 80 MAP minus 18 divided by cardiac output of 5, which is my flow in this case. So that would be 62 divided by 5, and then that gives me 12.4 millimeter of mercury per liter per minute. But I want to convert it to things. Then I multiply by 80, so that will convert it to things. Well, I can calculate my impact. Okay. So I can calculate my impact. If you go back here, now you can see that the PAP systolic is 50, right there, and the PAP diastolic is 20, right there. So, using the same formula that we use for calculating the MAP, did that go past it? Yeah, right there. So I'm going to do impact there. That will be x plus 2 times d divided by 3. So the 50 plus 2 times 20 divided by 3, that will give me 30. So my impact is 30 millimeter of mercury. And then I can calculate my pulmonary vascular resistance now. So it will be my impact minus my waist pressure divided by cardiac output. So that will be 30 minus 5 divided by 5. That will be 5 millimeter of mercury per liter per minute. And then I convert that to Danes. I have to multiply by 80, and that will give me 400 Danes. Any questions? I can calculate my cardiac index. I just take my cardiac output of 5 and divide it by 2. That would be 2.5 liters per minute per meter squared. So that's normal cardiac index. Normal cardiac index is 2 to 4. And then I can calculate my right ventricular stroke work. Everything on the right hand side is what you're going to use. Impact, which is on the right side, minus CVP, which is also on the right side, times your stroke volume, okay, times 0.0136. That's a constant, it's always going to be there. That number is there to convert the other units to a unit called the gram meter. So that's why we're multiplying by 0.0136. So if we did that, we have our impact we calculate to be 30 minus the right atrial pressure for the CVP, since I don't have my CVP, times 50, which is the stroke volume, times 0.136. So that gives me 8.6 gram meter. Okay, gram meter. Any questions? And then I can index that if I want to calculate my right ventricular stroke work index. Then I'll be dividing the right ventricular stroke work by my body surface area. So we have 8.6 divided by 2. That will be 4.3. And then on the other side, we have the left ventricular stroke work. Okay? So everything on the left is what we're going to use. The MAP, mean arterial pressure, is on the left side, minus the wage, which is also on the left side, times the stroke volume. Remember, the stroke volume ought to be the same. What you pump out on the right is what you pump out on the left. So it doesn't really matter. Times 0.0136. And then that will give us like 51. And then when we index that, we just divide by 2, that would be 25.5 gram meter squared. No, gram meter per meter squared. Okay? Now, what I want you to do is, when you go home, I'm not going to let you go here, because I know you're exhausted now. You do this at home. I do this at home like we did. So I work it out. I used to didn't work it out, So you can look at my examples. And then you do this one here before you do your homework. Okay? Can you do that?